Welcome to the panel, where smart founders discuss the realities of building a business and a better life. I'm one of your hosts, Justin Jackson. I'm the co-founder of Transistor.fm.
And I'm Brian Castle. I am building products at Instrumental Products.
And in a moment, you're going to hear the voice of...
I'm Jay Clouse, the founder of Creator Science.
I'm Peldi, the founder of Balsamiq.
You know you're a big deal when you can just go by your first name. You don't even need to say your last name. That's Peldi in our circles.
That is Peldi. That's Peldi. Why don't you give people a little background on Peldi? Who is he?
Peldi is the founder of Balsamiq Mockups. First of all, it's a company and a bootstrap business that I've been a fan of and a follower for so many years. But the tool itself, Balsamiq, is one of my favorite design tools. I've been using it for so many years, from the early desktop versions to the cloud version that they have today. I still go back to it. Even with the Figmas and everything, it's still easier and faster to whip up a mockup, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and he's just this incredible story. But also on the show today, we have Jay Clouse, who is the founder of Creator Science, which is a membership community for full-time creators. And Jay is just one of my favorite thinkers. And he wields articulate thoughts like a sharp knife. Like, he is just able to pierce through all the noise, and he has these perfectly formed thoughts. So you'll hear this in a minute. He's just like thinking, and then he'll come in with a brilliantly formed nugget of wisdom.
You know, Jay is one of these folks who I've been like following and seeing around for years on Twitter and Bluesky and all these things. But I got to know him about a year ago, and what's interesting about what he does at Creator Science is that it's such a great brand name because it is the science of creator businesses. Mm-hmm. And I started becoming more interested in a creator business for myself about a year ago, and I found that the content, even like the technical stuff that Jay shares on this business model, is really a level above what you see on like the typical like info product or training or, you know, how to launch a membership program. He talks about those kinds of businesses from a higher level, and it's just like wisdom all the way through.
Now, let me explain how this conversation came about. Originally, we were going to have Jay on with Marie Poulin to talk about YouTube. And we're still going to have Marie on in a future episode.
We still got to cover YouTube.
Yeah, we still got to cover YouTube.
Yep.
We couldn't get a hold of Marie in time. And as we were kind of waiting to hear back from her, I got this email from Peldi. And he said, hey, I'm wondering if we could talk about build in public. He's like, Justin, you're kind of a build in public guy, and I've got all these questions. And I said, well, why don't you come on the panel? This is what I love the show, is that he emailed me and I'm like, why don't you come on the panel? And then I thought about Jay and I was like, this is perfect. Like, these are two people that have never met before. They're both like masterclass operators in their field. And I thought pairing these two is going to be so interesting. And I think you're going to see that in the conversation. Like, just getting these perspectives, we're going to be able to do this, I think, over and over again, two entirely different perspectives on this one topic.
I really enjoyed this. This was our third episode that we've recorded so far for the panel podcast. And I like you're saying, I really like how this one took sort of a different, still the same format of four people on a show, but it's sort of like three of us helping Peldi like think through this this hot seat format, you know?
Yeah.
It was a really interesting, like I could see this type of episode coming back around again in the future for sure.
Yeah, and we kick it off right with Peldi on the hot seat. Let's listen in to the conversation. Peldi, it was your email that kind of instigated this whole get together. You emailed me out of the blue asking about build in public. So I actually want to start with you. Why are you interested in build in public at this point? February 2025.
I know, wild. So, as you know, I was building in public in 2007.
Yes.
Blogging when we still had blogs, and the term didn't exist, and it wasn't really a thing that people did. I was mostly doing it as kind of a diary in public because I didn't have anybody to talk to. I'm a solo founder. And I needed to write things down kind of to clarify my thoughts. And then it became this incredible marketing move that was completely accidental because people came to their website and they started following along with the journey. And
So did it work for Balsamiq? Like you would say that was a major channel for you back then?
absolutely. The product was pretty good from the beginning, but people came for the story. They came to the website and they went to the blog and followed, all the steps. And I would publish revenue numbers every other week or something like that. And that's actually what got us in the New York Times. The title of the New York Times article was "Man Builds Software, Blogs About It, and Makes 100K." It was the novelty of somebody sharing so openly at the time. And then it became the thing to do for a while. But then it kind of went away. When blogs went away, it kind of went away. And now I was thinking about it again because, like everybody else, I switched to Bluesky. And that's where it started popping up on my feed. I followed some of the starter packs that they have over there. And I started seeing building public this, building public that, and I was like, oh, I remember those days. And then I had a thought, but I don't know if it's a good idea. But I'll tell you.
That's why we're here. Yeah.
Why I wrote you. So
we're going
I'd
to tell
like
you
to
what we think.
pick your gentleman's brains about this. But the idea is that now that I rediscovered this approach, I kind of want to give back. I had a little bit of nostalgia, and now I have something that maybe, perhaps, could be useful to people building in public, which is Balsamiq itself. Right? We make a low-fidelity wireframing tool, and I know firsthand how amazing it is when you share a wireframe of an idea of a feature with your audience. I used to do it all the time.
Yeah.
When we had forums, I would before starting coding, I would design a quick wireframe of what I was thinking of building, put it in the forums, and say, "Hey, is this what you guys are asking for?" And this conversation would start, and I would iterate and it was great because I was too busy making the product to use the product.
Yeah.
My customers use the product all day, every day, and so they knew exactly what they needed better than even myself. And just iterating on the wireframe was so quick and so fast that then when I went and built the thing, it was basically fully tested and immediately successful, right? Because it was already validated.
Yeah.
So I just got to say, everything I'm hearing here, I love this. I love this direction because I feel like it goes back to in what my view is like the original build in public, like you were saying, Peldi, around like 2007. What I remember might have been a little bit after that, like 08, 09. I remember the beginning of Dribble. Dribble, the website with 3 Bs.
Yeah.
The very beginning of that site, what Dan Cederholm was putting together was designers showing small screenshots of here's sort of like a work in progress concept of what I'm creating, what I'm building, right? And that's what always interested me. And same with you, Peldi, just like kind of blogging and sharing the story, like that, like the building part of building in public was always much more interesting to me than it sort of became a lot more about like sharing revenue numbers and sharing financials, right. and apparently that's building in public, but that never really rang true to me. It was the what am I actually creating? What am I designing? So when you talk about using Balsamiq as what it is, a creating tool, but it could also be like a sharing your creation tool. I like that direction.
Feels like there's a few different levels to this. Jay, you just released a kind of, a software product built in Notion, right? Did you use any of this build in public stuff? Were you sharing screenshots and mock-ups and stuff like that in your community and in public? What was the plan there?
Not quite. I mean, basically that product was the thing I had made and used myself. But when I would do, so in my membership, I do this monthly retro. And that's basically like a 30-minute of me walking through a list of my goals and projects for the month, and also like screen sharing whatever else is relevant. And I would often be screen sharing my Notion setup, and people would ask like, can I have that? So there was validation in the form of I was using it and people saw it and they asked for it. And so then I basically productized a useful version for other people too.
Yeah.
But I didn't do a lot of the build in public because when you do that, it's such a vulnerable thing that like begs for conversation.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of times the things that I'm building feel closer to art to me, and I'm actually not looking for input on a lot of things that I'm building.
Yeah.
And when I put it out and people are like, this is great, but I hate this, or I would do this, I'm kind of like, well, that's fine, but I didn't actually, I wasn't
asking for that feedback.
Yeah.
So some stuff feels more appropriate for build in public for me, but today I feel like build in public has kind of transformed into brag in public.
Yeah.
It's this like marketing propaganda machine for what you're doing more than an earnest conversation.
Right. So that's my challenge, and that's why I don't think this might be a good idea, because I've been following the hashtags on Bluesky and Reddit, etc., LinkedIn even, and there is no conversation. Mm-hmm. It's announcements, and it still feels useful for accountability. Like I knew I have to share something every day, so I have to do something to share.
Yeah.
But it's mostly, progress updates or learnings, but there's barely any responses to any of those messages.
Yeah. This is great. I love this because even what you were doing, Jay, was you were like, I'm guessing you were making videos and then you were sharing your setup and people were like, whoa, hold up. What's that?
Yes.
And that instantly reminds me of Adam Wathan creating Tailwind. He was like building in public. He would just do these live streams where he was trying to build a SaaS. I think it was a competitor to Gumroad. And in his mind, he's building in public. He's building the SaaS in public with the hopes of building up demand for, the SaaS. But what ended up happening is people were like, whoa, hold on. What's this way you're writing CSS? And he's like, oh no, don't worry about that. Let's just get back to this part here. And that kind of building in public where you're like, hey, I'm running my business over here and here's me either using the product or here's me just going about my day. Here's how I organize my thoughts. Here's how I organize my, in your case, Jay, content creation schedule. That's like the build in public that I think has been lost. Because that does invite a conversation. It's like, how are you doing that? Like, how do you manage all of the content that you're producing, Jay? Like, how do you do that? And that feels more like back and forth than.
And I think it's interesting how I think the value of what you're describing there is not so much like I already have this product that I'm trying to market, so I'm going to use build in public as my marketing strategy. Like in the case of Adam. And we've seen it time and time again. I'm sure all of us have experienced this. Actually, Jay, what you were just describing, where the rhythm of building in public as like just a constant thing that we always do eventually leads to, oh, now I understand what it is that I'm doing that actually resonates versus what I'm doing that sort of falls flat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we think, we love to think that everything that we do is going to work, but most of it is not going to work. But there's going to be a few bits that are like, oh, maybe there is something here, or I didn't, like in the case of Adam, like he was building something else. He didn't realize that he had a nugget of value in Tailwind CSS that like, oh, that's a thing, Yeah. I mean, there was Jerry Seinfeld's book, like, is this anything? Just like putting something out there. And he's like, is there something here? Oh, I guess there is. That's the result of building in public. You find out what it is.
So maybe what you're saying is that it's not social media, but it's more like Twitch, where building in public is more appropriate or more effective.
Live streaming is the one thing I thought of right away. Was what I like about live streaming is there is just this like, hey everybody, it's Justin, and then people come in to the comments, right? They can leave comments or whatever, and often it's the same characters again. Like oh, hey, how's it going, man? And then they can leave comments as you're twiddling away, doing stuff. And yeah, that part for me with Transistor, that was one of the things we were doing. I just found it very motivating is like if I was like procrastinating on building our website or whatever, I'd be like, hit live stream, and then it's just broadcast out to YouTube. And I was doing YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch all at once. And
See, I struggle with live streaming because the things that I want to build in public, the things that I want to share in public is like design work and things that I code. And like if I code for if I'm building for 8 hours a day, probably like 7 of those hours are just like me staring blankly at the screen, and then like maybe half an hour is actual coding. So I can't do that live, you know?
yeah, I do think there is something about build in public that can still be like using your own product. Like, Jay, I think you could actually, you maybe have done this, but I think like I'm just fascinated by your output still. And I'd love to see like more live streams of you using your existing, sorry, what's the Notion product again?
Creator HQ.
Creator HQ. I'd love to see you in Creator HQ more. Like,
Yeah. I
have you
should do
thought
more.
about that, or are you already doing those live streams? Or
I think about it all the time. Like the people who see it are the folks in the membership again, because when I just screen share and talk about what I'm doing, that's where like it's the most just open, you know?
yeah,
Because I know who's seeing it.
yeah,
The thing that scares me about, I mean, I come back to this thought constantly, which is I should teach people how to do something. And through teaching, I should show them my method of doing it, which is through this tool. That would, of course, drive sales to the tool.
yeah,
But my version of Creator HQ has been personalized even further to me, because every system you use and build like becomes more and more. And I know if I start sharing my current system, people are going to say, again, what's that? And
Yeah.
I want that into mine. And Notion is not software that you can just like push updates to. Any type of update I make in it, I have to document, here's how to make this update yourself, basically.
Yeah.
And it's a can of worms that I haven't opened yet, because
yeah,
the deluge of support requests would just crush me.
yeah, yeah.
I've been playing around with that a little bit, like through the YouTube videos I've been doing recently, and you know, where what I'm showing is like a whole code project, right? I can't explain everything that you might catch somewhere on the screen, you know, but I'm trying to sort of paint with a broad brush. Like, all right, here, high level, here's what I'm building. Here are the big pieces. Like, don't worry about every line of code. Just here's what I'm building here, and either you could fill in the gaps yourself, or just get the high level concept and sort of trust the audience to take what they will from this video and then go run with it in your own way, and maybe not promising or not marketing this thing as like a step-by-step tutorial, but more like look over my shoulder and watch me work and take what you will from it.
I just wonder what the actual potential of that type of thing in 2025 is, because we have TikToked tutorials. Like my wife,
yeah.
when she wants to do anything, she'll find a 12-second tutorial that actually will teach her how to do it in
No
12
way.
seconds. Yeah,
Like
100%.
she's searching. So the way I use YouTube, she's using TikTok. Like she'll search like how
And
to
it's
fix
better.
the dishwasher.
And it's better because it's shorter.
It gets you right to the answer.
It's as powerful of a search engine, but it's much better. In fact, when the TikTok ban happened, she deleted the app. She can't get the app back. And I've been telling her, I'm like, just look on YouTube. And it's a worse experience because she has to look through the results and try to find a short, because it's showing longs and shorts. She wants the shortest possible version of how to do something, and YouTube isn't nearly as good at it as
This
TikTok
is
is.
blowing my mind. You young kids, I can't believe it.
I do the same, and I'm the oldest one here for sure.
you know, I think
you're
there's
searching on TikTok for how-to videos.
No, now that's the only thing that I use YouTube Shorts for. Whenever I
Okay.
want to do a how-to, now I go straight. I look for the short instead of the
Yeah, how do I
regular
fix
one,
the thing
because
in
the
my
long
house?
videos are all about. There's like 30 seconds of an animation intro. You know
Yeah.
what I'm talking about? Terrible animation.
Okay.
So the opportunity to kind of live stream, look over my shoulder, work with me, I think it's serving a different need. It's not like actually build with me. It's like it's the companionship itch that people have more than the learning itch.
I wonder if that's more valuable though, because if you think about
To some people.
the YouTube videos that I'll Google or I'll YouTube to try to fix something in my house, like I am looking for that 30-second, just give me the answer right now. I honestly don't care who you are. I'm not going to sign up to your newsletter and follow your podcast. I just want you to tell me how to fix my refrigerator or whatever it is. Whereas if I'm going to subscribe to your podcast and tune in every single week and follow your story, or I just like the way that you work or your design style, I want to look over your shoulder. Like, now I'm actually developing a relationship with you and following your story and maybe buying your products or recommending your products. Like that long form, sort of boring to the rest of the world, but to your core group, it's super interesting. Like, that seems like the marketing value of
Yeah, it
building
seems
a pub.
like Jay is doing it right. He does it for his members, right? Or Patreon groups, right? There's a lot of live streams, and what you pay for the membership is also direct access to your, the person you're learning from.
That is a form of building public, I think, is having a community. Like, in some ways, that is the best form. You got like this smaller, more intimate group where it's like, well, okay, now we can be real.
Right.
And yeah, I guess it depends. I think one way we could actually sharpen this conversation, Peldi, is to zoom in on you and hopefully not make you feel too uncomfortable. But I'm curious, like, what is really motivating this? Like, is this just nostalgia for old building public days? Are you trying to grow Balsamiq revenue? Like, what's
it started
underlying thing?
It started, like I said, because kind of it popped back up, and I got nostalgic, and I'm always thinking, how can I give back now that we're in a good place.
Yeah.
And giving back free Balsamiq takes no time. It's something I can do myself. We have these extended codes, or I can make somebody's account free, no problem.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling, okay, this is easy for me to give. Is there a market? Is it needed? Or because I also don't want to waste my time or their time. I don't want to start a new initiative that's going to flop. Right?
Got it.
So
Okay.
I'm doing research. I'm doing discovery now.
This is
to figure
perfect.
out.
So let's brainstorm. Jay, Brian, and myself, let's brainstorm with that goal in mind. What do you think? What is the right approach if Peldi wanted to have the maximum kind of value or impact in terms of giving back? And sorry, are you talking about giving back to just makers, builders, founders? Like, who's the intended audience?
I would say, people who build in public, which is, future founders, really. People who
Okay.
are trying to become founders. So the goal is to give back. And then the theory was, these are people who like to share. Maybe they would like to also share Balsamiq. And as a result, we get a few more, brand awareness here and there.
Okay.
And really the goal for that is so that I can put it in the Slack channel and the team gets pumped because we got, another review or another mention or something.
Oh,
That's
I
really
love
my
this.
ultimate goal.
That's an
to
interesting-
motivate
yeah.
the team.
Listen to these jobs to be done here. There's
Totally.
like these underlying jobs to be done. I
So
like it.
it's three different things, but
Jay, any thoughts? What do you think with those kind of jobs in mind, those goals? What are you really thinking while you were listening to that?
Well, I think it'd be easy to like tune into the conversations and then ping these people who are sharing and be like, this is awesome. Do you want a free account of Balsamiq to share how you're doing this? But I think what I would do in your shoes is like programize it, like make it a program where you have a build in public fellowship and you market the fellowship to try, like, you don't say, hey, do you individual want this free account? I'll give it to you. You say, hey, you seem like you're a great fit for our fellowship if you're interested.
Right.
And you market the fellowship as a whole, try to drive applications, maybe even get some media attention around it. And then you disperse at one time to those people, however many you think is the right amount. And even, kind of cohort-ize it. So those people that are sharing in public together, maybe you give them a space in your Slack channel to communicate also. I think that's actually going to end up being more efficient and more effective. And like ultimately probably have more marketing value too.
So you're saying like get a group of people that want to build in public and say, let's do a cohort group and then bring people through together and we'll all be sharing together, but there'll be this nice mutually beneficial, energy kind of. Is that what you're thinking, Jay?
Yeah, no expectations. You get a Balsamiq account. We'll create a space for you guys to share together. But as you're observing Peldi, sometimes people are sharing, they're building in public and getting no feedback. So if you
Yeah.
are able to kind of put out the bat signal and collect 20 of those people,
Right.
give them a place where they can actually connect with each other,
Yeah.
this is solving multiple problems for them.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
so. I mean, you're like this is this is a whole concept that I've been thinking about for the last month or two. Talking to like Colleen Schnettler, who was on our first episode, where she did the same sort of thing for people doing marketing. I've been thinking about some sort of like building like semi-public, kind of private. What are you building? You know, share some video updates. I hadn't been thinking about integrating Balsamiq into that, but that's a really perfect concept.
Right. So I love the idea, Jay, of kind of batching it, making a cohort, because I was already thinking that another thing that I could offer other than just the tool is that I could actually respond whenever somebody shares a wireframe. I could give them my professional opinion or get my product designer to comment on them. And it's like, hey, improve this, improve that. But with your idea, it's 20 people on top of me. It's each other giving each other feedback on the
Yeah.
threads.
You know, the other thing that this makes me think of, Peldi, is like if you did a cohort, I would want to join it. So like often the audience for Build in Public is people just getting started. You know, they're going from 0 to 1. But there's also this other interesting group of people like me that I kind of like, what's the job to be done for me? It's like reignite some of that same energy I had when we were in the trenches building Transistor. Give me some of that like feeling of collaborating with other people that aren't, you know, I love my team and coworkers, but now we're this kind of insulated unit and we don't have as much outside, you know, perspectives and other things. And also I think you have this benefit because you're like multiple steps ahead of me where I'm at right now. Right. So it'd be a lot different, but I think there's another opportunity of like, let's take a bunch of these older folks and kind of craft, and you could go any way with that. It could be, this is the UX, UI, work in public. We've all got these old apps and we're going to like put each other in the hot seat and live. We're all going to go, hey, let's go through this Transistor sign-up flow. Why, have you ever thought about doing this? And I think that would be fascinating from both a like marketing perspective. Like I would tune in for that, but as a participant,
Like a mastermind. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'd be like, I'd love to have Peldi's brain and a bunch of other smart people kind of doing that together.
That seems like it's
And
actually
just to like go back to like the job to be done or the multiple jobs to be done here. I think where people start to misread or try to like misuse build in public as a strategy, they think if I build in public, the people who watch me build in public are going to buy my product. And I didn't hear that job to be done in anything that Peldi said. I think you're right on, Peldi, to think about, you know, yeah, it gets mentioned and exposed a little bit for like brand awareness, but more so it's about like firing up your team and this kind of stuff, or forming a community here. And this adds energy to the product itself. Like ultimately, like the product is what is ultimately what's going to win over customers. It's not because I saw these tweets about it, I'm going to go buy that product, right? So I just think that's an interesting thing to think about, these like second and third order effects of just having it out there or using it as a tool to bring people together. That's like the ... that eventually leads to customers, you know.
Jay, you were going to say?
Well, if you pushed forward with a cohort and it was folks like Justin as cohort 1, not only does it have great like marketing and brand value for future cohorts, but you can almost approach it like a rehabbing of the image of Build in Public itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we're
This
taking
is what you're actually supposed to do if you're building.
we're taking a
public.
dozen people who truly built in public, and they're doing it again in public for you to see through the Balsamiq fellowship, you know. And then, you know, you have the existing megaphones of people who have already built some notoriety and a following doing this. And then when it comes around for cohort number 2, you maybe bring in some of the more earlier stage folks who found out about it.
The first one
through
is
this
the
first
marketing
one.
for the program.
Yeah. Oh, I
And the education.
fucking
sets the
love that,
standard.
Jay. That's because I love the point of view there, which is also just great. I think there's a lesson here in terms of, a lot of what we end up just talking about on the show is like, people want to know how to market their stuff and how to get stuff noticed and everything. And that suggestion that Jay just made just sharpened it enough where it's like, we're not just doing build in public, we're doing build in public with a point of view. Build in public is broken. Like it's tired. People are tired of these 20-year-olds with the floofy hair talking about their revenue and how they hit
floofy hair,
this is not that. We've got a new perspective. We're bringing the old school back, or we're going to do this differently. We're going to do this the way it should be. And I can see
something
that
I
resonating.
think about a lot on that note is like the imposter syndrome that comes with building in public, especially around codings and design. But this is something that I still sort of struggle with today because I'm starting to do more YouTube content and sharing in public, showing actual code stuff. And I constantly think about there are these more experienced developers who are going to pick apart my code and say, you're doing it wrong, right? But I think that especially, and we've talked a lot about the younger generation of these episodes are turning into a bunch of old people talking about. But there is a younger generation of professionals in our industry who are lacking. I mean, what I had, probably what all of us had, was I literally sat next to somebody in an office and I learned CSS from a person for 2 straight years in my early 20s. Most people in this industry are lacking that early career mentorship or community, or just literally being in the same office with someone. And so we look to YouTube, we look to social media, we look to because that's what I'm still to this day still so interested in, watching how other people work. How do you do it? Because everyone does it completely differently. Yeah, there's tried and true frameworks or approaches to certain things, but we all use our tools. Probably even the way that I use Balsamiq is probably different from the next Balsamiq user, even though we're using the same tool,
Right, just give me an idea that the first cohort is all old people, with already a following. Jay's idea. The second cohort, we do half and half, and we do a buddy system. Each new
I like
person
that.
gets paired with a veteran, and that also it's mentoring in public.
Yeah.
Right. Then the third cohort is maybe more all young people helping each other.
Well, the third cohort could be mentored by people in the second cohort.
Oh, yes.
And on and on and on.
You're a genius.
Are you doing some of that, Jay, inside your community? Is that part of the program there, or?
No, because it's not like this linear completable thing. It's a great model for cohort-based courses because there's a clear time boundness and end point. But the lab is this perpetual membership where there's not this single clear goal that everybody is doing, and so you finish and then now you can go back and help other people who are on the exact same path. So it doesn't quite work in that context. But if you did have everybody enter their cohort and say okay, you're welcome, you're in the build in public cohort for the next 30 days, you're going to be doing this with the singular goal that at the end of 30 days you something, maybe it's publish a blog post about the experience or whatever, then it's a little bit more formalized in that people who have already gone through that exact process will know where the holdups were, what was hard for them, and they can help people get past them.
Okay, this is a loosely related question, but Jay, you've got, I think, something I've struggled with, and I think so I love the idea of teaching people how to be bootstrapped founders. And so you're trying to teach people how to be full-time creators, is that correct?
It's actually, at this point, the people in the membership are full-time creators. So it's not teaching them how to do that. It's basically keeping them at the edge of what's working for full-time creators right now.
Oh, interesting. So you're not the 0 to 1. You're going how do we? So what's the primary? Is there a primary objective most members have? What's the goal?
No, the goal is just to maintain edge, to like find and maintain edge, because everything's changing all the time. And when things change, it sucks for our businesses. So
Yeah.
like really, my goal is, everybody in there, every full-time creator in there is running experiments big and small constantly and learning
Yeah.
from them. But wouldn't it be great if we learned from each other's experiments in
Yeah.
parallel constantly? And it's part that, like, experimenting and sharing. It's part like really high quality on demand support for whatever question ails you as a professional creator. But yeah, my goal is, like, if I can provide 1 to 2 key insights per person at the level of scale these people are, like, it's super high leverage. It's super valuable.
Yeah. And is it primarily coming from you? Like, you're the one that's like giving, or is the community giving each other stuff?
It used to be, but we put in place an application and some like eligibility criteria to get in. And now most of the people that are in there are people like me. So like a lot of value does come from me because I'm the most active member of the community. But I'm actively trying to decenter myself because there are so many people here who know stuff better than I do.
That's
Like, we have people that are just killing it on Instagram, and I'm just getting started on Instagram. I should not be teaching Instagram in that
Yeah.
space.
That's a really good. I know that this conversation is sort of veering into like what it's like to run a community, or Peldi. The idea is like to form a community around this. It's something that I've been thinking a lot about too. Actually, like a build in public sort of concept as well. But my big question that I keep coming back to, like, Jay, you run this membership community. I'm wondering around this concept of like build in public, or learn from your peers, and how much work or time or commitment does it take the community organizer, the leader, Jay, or theoretically like Peldi for this, like how much time and energy and commitment does it take to, especially in the early days of something like this, to get it going, to get other people to regularly contribute updates on what they're working on, especially people who aren't used to building in public naturally? What does that look like?
This is the most common question I get related to memberships, and I think it's actually the wrong question, or at least the answer I'm going to give you is not directly related to that question, because it's less, in my mind, about how many hours you're spending, because you answer a post and it takes 5 minutes. It's more about, are you willing to be tuned in so closely that you can provide very timely help? Because at a certain level, people are paying for speed. Like, these things matter a lot. And they're going to post in your community looking for help. They're going to wait. If they don't get a response fast enough, they're going to say, I'm going to look elsewhere to find that help. And now they're never coming back to your community as the place to get support in that way. So the thing that took so much time and continues to take a lot of like mind space for me is that I have notifications on for every place in that community. I see everything that comes in the moment it comes in. And if I can add value, I do it as quickly as I can.
And you treat it as like a core. It is like your core business is like
Totally,
participating and running that community.
It's recurring revenue. You get recurring revenue in a membership by providing recurring value. And so if I let off the gas, a lot of that value is no longer there. And it's a fickle thing, because on an individual basis, if I made an effort to extract value from the membership and that effort failed, I'm probably not going to try again. And if I don't try again, that's a whole person who could also add value to other people who's probably not going to participate. So it's never like done. It gets a little bit better where people are more and more tapped in over time. But there are negative network effects in community where if you let off the gas, it starts to slip, it slips faster and faster, and it can just kind of go to zero pretty quickly.
And have you noticed adverse, if the community gets too large, people share less? Does that happen?
Depending on the expectations and the design of the space, because in some communities, like, we don't expect the value to be derived from peer-to-peer conversation. We come in and we want the content, we want to learn this, and we're happy to be anonymous in that space. But if you're marketing and positioning the value as peer-to-peer connectivity, there is magic of this feeling of what I call closeness. And if you start to feel more anonymous in the space, or like you don't feel close to the other people there, then you have a problem, if that's what the expectation is or was. And so I think the magic and the very challenging thing about scaling a community that has closeness is to continue to create ways and mechanisms where people can still experience closeness even in an ever-growing group of people.
I have a good example of this. I joined the Running Remote community, which is a paid community for people who run remote companies.
Okay.
And it's pretty large, but what they do is that they create these little Slack channels for groups of 6 people. And they pair them up with different criteria. And so these are your buddies inside the community. And once a month, there's an hour phone call with just these 6 people where there's a hot seat, rotation, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one way.
So that's like a smaller one within the larger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. It's hard to do because it's just logistically onerous to do.
Oh, yeah. The administrator is in every little group and
Totally.
in every meeting. And like, she
So
does a great job, but it's fully full-time.
I think of it as concentric circles, that the larger the total group is, the more circles need to get smaller and smaller for people who want different sized experiences, even down to one-to-one, like accountability partners or having a coach in there. But most of the time it kind of breaks down to one of these small groups.
And this comes back to bring it back to building in public. I really think that the most valuable form of building in public is in private, right? And it's like social media is what sort of like corrupted the whole build in public thing over the years, because it's the revenue graphs that get the most retweets and likes, right? But the real good stuff happens in these small mastermind groups. I've been a part of. I just got back last week from snowboarding with a group of 12 founder friends. We do it every year for the last 10 years. Also like small private podcast groups where only a small group of us can tune into what each other are talking about. That kind of stuff is where like the real stuff gets shared. And then to bring it back to the imposter syndrome, that's where you can be more vulnerable, because you know it's not published out on the internet. It's just for these you literally know all the people who could tune into this.
Yeah. There is a form of build in public that I think is a lower lift, and that's and Jay, you're doing this as well. These you do these little micro episodes of your podcast. I think you just have your AirPods in and you're like out for a walk or something.
Literally, I just talk into my voice note recorder on my phone.
Okay. And I really enjoy those episodes. I specifically just tune in for those episodes because they have this feeling of like Jay's just walking around and he's vulnerably sharing what's really going on and maybe some of your fears, some of the things you're thinking about. And I think that's still underutilized. Like the thing I always liked about Build in Public was, people blogging and recording on podcasts and then them articulating a real fear or a real like thing I'd felt inside that I hadn't heard anybody else articulate. And then you hear them say it and it's like, oh my God, I'm not alone. Like thank you, And that can be more broadcasty, just like, hey, this is just me, this is just Peldi, this is whoever, and I'm just sharing, I'm turning off my professional marketer broadcast hat, and I'm just talking from the heart. And I think that can be effective. I think it's still underutilized, and it's a lower lift, I think.
I agree. That's why I do it, because the time from inspiration to publishing is the time it takes to record. That's like kind of my goal with it is I don't want to think about it too much. It's like once I have the insight and a rough outline in my mind, I just sit down, I talk into it, I airdrop it to my computer, and I upload it to my host just right there.
That's what I love about TikTok. It's one take, and that's good enough.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've been doing the same thing since last year, just private. I have a private podcast feed. I publish it through the Ripple thing that I started last year, and I do the same thing, just driving around or out on a walk with terrible audio, like through the headphones, whatever. It's just something that I can express what is on my mind right now and put it out. And it's the kind of thing that like you were saying, Justin, it lends itself to being more vulnerable, because when I'm out walking or driving, that's when I'm thinking strategically and stuff. But there have been multiple times where I'll record one and I'm like, I can't even share that. That's too raw.
That happens to me a lot too. What's the mechanism for? You said you do it on a private feed. What's the mechanism for getting people access to the private feed? How do people become aware?
I built it.
But how do people know that it exists?
I share it I initially shared it with my newsletter and social, but then I set it up through Ripple, Ripple.fm, so that because what I wanted to do originally, the idea was just to do a private podcast, but then I realized that like anyone can just listen to this thing, and I wanted to have a way for people to like enter their email address and actually register as a subscriber, and then get their own private feed that I can grant and revoke access to. And so that's what happens through Ripple.
And how do you continuously make people aware that this exists to opt them into that?
I don't really market it too much. It's on my website. I mention it every now and again. If I publish a new one, I'll tweet out, or Bluesky out, like, hey, I've got a new private podcast coming out. Here's what it's got. And if you want in, you still have to enter your email address, and that gets you onto my list and gets you a feed.
Yeah. What were you saying, Peldi?
That this is really for the super fans, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like
the
I
goal
find
is not
that
to have too many people in there.
Yeah, and even that, I'm starting to think like it's a little bit too open. Like I'm
Right.
more hesitant to share on it because
Right.
there's a bunch of people who came on the list who I don't really know personally. So, yeah.
It needs a name. It's not a podcast. It's a different thing.
Yeah. But you can't do it like Jay just you put those voice notes in your big podcast feed. Has there been any hesitation to sharing some of those more personal thoughts, or?
If there's hesitation to share it, I just don't share it. I mean,
Okay.
like as Brian was saying, sometimes I'll record something. I probably have like another 10 of those episodes that I haven't published that just live. Like I do it, I record it, and either
I'll pay $500 right now to listen to those.
sometimes though it's like that was it's kind of like the book that should have been a blog post. Sometimes even like a 5-minute recording should have been a 2-minute recording, and I'm like, I'm not gonna upload that. But then sometimes it's like maybe not. But I don't know. I feel like I've kind of edited myself to the point where I think of transparency as a spectrum. It's not like a binary.
Yeah.
So I kind of know where on the transparent spectrum I'm willing to be publicly.
Yeah.
And I just kind of operate that way now.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part about any sort of build in public stuff is what I find most resonant is the really personal stuff and people honestly sharing when they have challenges. Like, hey, I'm going through this right now. It sucks, And it's hard to share that stuff. Transistor, when we were building it, we were sharing our revenue numbers. And it was awesome up until $30,000 a month. And then it started to get not awesome. It was just like it just invited a type of attention that wasn't very fun. Mm-hmm. And so even though there was a big benefit to it, I loved those revenue posts where people transparently shared, like, here's what we're doing and here's how we got here. Like, I love that stuff, but it had its limit. And then there's just also some stuff that it would be valuable to share, but you can't. You gotta watch yourself.
There's some stuff. I mean, I participated in this because when you share numbers, it performs quote unquote well, and so you think this is what people want. But what I came to realize was it creates this very pernicious emotion, which is envy. So even if people engage with it, you're creating envy. And that's like it's a toxic emotion that over the long term, it actually flips and people stop rooting for you and they start actually kind of rooting for you to fail. I've heard, I think it was Hormozy said, he's like, everyone wants you to be successful, just not more successful than them.
Yeah.
And so you get to a point where like it's unrelatable when you're creating envy and people don't actually want to root for you anymore because it's a confronting, bad feeling thing. So I share numbers much less frequently now. And mostly in private circles, as Brian was talking about. I talk instead about like percentages because percentages are relative.
Yeah.
Like if you increase this 21%, here's how. You don't have to be gross about, and I'm making all kinds of money, Scrooge McDuck money. It's like, let's talk about increasing this percentage, and that can lead into the lesson.
Yeah. Well, how have you walked that line, Peldi? Because you still share your numbers. I'm looking at your 2023 revenue and projections.
We just sent out
does?
the
Let me
newsletter
pull
this
this
week. We just sent out the newsletter this week with the revenue numbers for 2024.
So what's the thinking there? How is it? Why do you do that?
We do that now because it's a tradition, because of inertia, because we think people expect it, or we like to continue. But I tell you, it gets harder and harder. I feel like it's less and less relevant. Oh, there you go, screen sharing, fancy.
There it is, right there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's our latest newsletter. So as you can see, we had revenue declining for the last 4 years, and it's fine for us because we're still super profitable. But it might send a message that we're dying, which we're not. And so it gets a little. So for instance, you see in the second chart, you can see that the products we care about, if you only count those, we're actually flat. We're not declining. We're declining because desktop is declining. Because who installs the desktop apps anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the reason why we're declining. But
And how do customers? This is my perspective. Is it seems like you have cultivated this community around your company that are like big cheerleaders of what you're doing. Is that the case? Like, is that what you have right now?
I feel like it's shifted a little bit. It was bigger in the past. Now it's more, people care a lot less about Balsamiq as a company than they did in the past. And that's a sign of maturity. I've actively stopped doing talks and podcast interviews for a long time because I'm trying to not be the face of the company. I'm thinking legacy. We're going to be 17 years old this year, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to let the product stand on its own legs. And so we just removed a ton of content from the website that was about the company because it's more about the product. It's more, we want to become a more boring company that it's well known because of its value to customers, rather than it's Peldi's story, it's appealing, and then I'll use Balsamiq.
It does seem like the build in public strategy, if you will, tends to lend itself more to new companies. Like, follow the story of this new thing that goes from nothing to something.
Right.
Yeah.
We sell now to mostly, that only 14% of our customers are designers now.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
So who's the customer?
They are software teams, technical lead at a big company that has to also act as a designer because they don't have designers, or founders, or it's mostly product managers that have to talk to designers and test with customers. So it's really anyone who has to act as a designer, but maybe the designer's too busy, or they don't have one.
That comes back to your original question or request here. It's like what to do with Balsamiq in the space of build in public, and hearing you talk about, well, most of the users are not actually designers; they're either technical people or marketers or someone. Maybe there's something around like technical people can use Balsamiq to mock up what they need, and then it gets reviewed by like a quote unquote real designer. What would they? Where would they take it? If the lead technical says like, here's where I took it, then another designer can give feedback or take it, give like a volley back where it's like, how about this? That could be an interesting form
I
of
have
content.
another question, actually, because hearing Jay talk about how much work it is and how much you kind of become a slave to, you have to answer quickly. I'm thinking of an evolution of the idea, which is that we don't run the program ourselves, but we instead partner with programs that already exist. And so the customer is not the cohort. The customer is the organizer of the community customer, so to speak. The person we interact with is, okay, you have a community for founders where you teach them everything about, starting. Do you want Balsamiq to offer to your founders? And,
Have you done any of that, Jay? Have you seen that work? Like
Does
a
that
company,
exist?
a company comes in and says they'll be the official sponsor or enabler or resource giver.
It could work. I think that could work depending on the model of the community and what your expectations are. Not every community needs to be designed for timeliness being being the job to be done. Right? I think that's what I've come to find my customer wanted, especially for the price point that they're paying. But I think it all comes down to the expectations of the experience that you set. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
Cortland isn't replying to every post on indie hackers within moments that it comes up. The expectations there are different. I think you could go to the like community as distribution model if you want, but it might, depending on the community, it might not be enough just to offer free product. You might actually have to compensate that community leader to do the effort and put their brand out there to promote your brand. I haven't
sponsorship.
Yeah, more of a sponsorship than like, depending on how much in line this is or how big that space is. It's a fairly frequent request when people are like, you have a captive audience of exactly my customers. Let me give you a free thing so that you can give to them. It's like, but I also know the motive here, and if these people are paying to be here, I need this to not feel like they're paying to be marketed to. So there's like an alignment question, and it's just going to be a case by case basis.
Would you do it, Jay, if it was like, let's say a company like Notion came to you and said, we just want to enable what you're doing. We want to be involved in some way, in a mutually beneficial way, and we'll make it worth your while. Like, there's a number. Would you do it? Like, would you consider it?
It's less about the number and more about the experience and the expectation.
Yeah.
There's not really a number for, can you give us the email addresses of your paying customers so we can email them about this product? There could be a number for like, we want to have a physical presence at the in-person event you're doing this year. Okay, maybe we talk about that, but we're also going to paint very explicit expectations around where you are having that experience and for how long. So again, it's kind of case by case, but at the end of the day, it's like, there are a lot of levers here. What experience did I promise to my paying customers? And is this additive and in line with that, or is it at odds with that?
Yeah.
Something I would be really interested in. I've used Balsamiq for many years, and I'm a designer and a builder. From like a content idea is, show me the original Balsamiq mockup of an idea, and then cut to the finished product that happened months later. Right? I love, like, what I love most about build in public or the type of build in public content is when someone sort of slips out, like, that big thing that we all know and love. Here is the original napkin mock-up of how that started. Right. Like, but, think about like any sort of like documentary that shares like the behind the scenes story of how this thing started. Like some sort of series like that, right? Where, you're sort of following along in the evolution of a new product or a big new feature from a popular company, and it'll take months to produce each one of these, but as that comes out, it would be really cool to see how how the rough concept is initially created in Balsamiq, and then to see how many iterations and changes it goes through by the time it hits production.
Yeah, that's always very interesting. Well, running our own cohorts could be a generation of that. About each project, we could document that, and it makes for a piece of content about it.
Yeah. In our final moments here, Peldi, it might be interesting. You've got 3 founders here. We each have teams. We're behind where you are. Were you, I don't know, 5-10 years ago? What is there anything you're seeing like in founders that you're like, oh, I wish they would know this. I wish they would do this. I wish they would understand that. Like, I'm trying to picture myself at your stage where it's like everything's mature. You seem relaxed. Like, you seem fine with even like revenue's flat, like you said, and you're like, it's good. We got a good thing going. Yeah. Is there anything you think founders like us are missing at this stage?
Well, the thing that has been hard for me is what I was talking about before, which is that as you get bigger and more established, you start thinking about legacy, thinking about a transition, right? So I've never thought about selling as one of the options. I've always wanted to have a forever business, but after a while, you start thinking, I'm going to exit the business one way or another, in a stretcher at some point.
Yeah.
And so you have to start, if things are going well, you have to start thinking long term and have to start thinking about who's going to run the company after you and how. And so I wish that I had started thinking about that earlier and in a more structured way. There's books you can buy about it. But we are now growing a strong leadership team where I'm fully delegating most things these days. And that was very hard for me because I'm a maker at heart. I just want to make stuff, right? So start getting into that mindset where, first of all, the company doesn't have to be about you anymore. You should not be involved in the day-to-day. You should be more setting business goals for the year, right?
Oh, that's going to be impossible.
Right? It's
Just
crazy.
take me out on a stretcher.
Right, exactly. Some people, I mean, that's fine. That's fine. If that's if that's what you want, that's fine. I was talking to April Dunford, the positioning guru, and she says, "No, I'm not hiring anybody, and the business dies with me.
Yeah.
I just know it. That's what I want, and that's why I'm never going to hire anybody. I only work with contractors, right? Fine. If you have that clarity." I have 29 employees. Somebody's going to have to take care of them when I'm gone. You know? So I can't afford to just say, okay, we're closing because I'm hurt or bored.
Yeah. That's great. This was good, guys. I'm liking this. I really love, Brian, I love putting together people that might have never met before. I think
Totally.
I actually had
different types of business models and everything.
Yeah. And even I had 10 questions for Jay about all of the stuff he's seeing in the creator community that software founders should be taking advantage of. So I think we'll have to have you both back. We'll pair you up with somebody new in the future. But this was awesome. Thanks for joining us today.
For sure.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thanks for having
Thanks
me.
for all the advice.